But keep in mind, though, there is a correct usage of discouragement if it is designed to help someone. For example, if you're watching a commercial on television and it's really designed to discourage people from driving and texting, then that may be considered an attempt to prevent a car accident or loss of life. So we can see where discourage in that phrase or that understanding means to hopefully stop us or prevent us from driving and texting. Are y'all with me? But most of the time, the earlier meaning that we discussed is one that comes up so often with regards to discouragement. And brothers and sisters, let me just share with you, I know that you look good today, and I know that you're saved and you love Jesus. I know that you know the scripture. I know that you know hymns. I know that you know how to stand, you know how to sit. You can pray, and you can encourage one another. And I say, praise the Lord, you say, praise the Lord right back at me. I know that. But one of the tools that the devil takes off of his shelf to use against the children of God is discouragement. When used properly against a child of God, a Christian that is discouraged will simply give up trying to do what God would have them to do without showing much resistance. Very often, this type of battle can be called spiritual warfare. That's really what it comes down to. Discouragement is found in family relationships. Discouragement is also found in the workplace. Discouragement is found in the political arena. Discouragement is found in the classrooms. Discouragement is found in our communities. Discouragement is found between friends, and also is found in the church house. The Church of Jesus Christ. We find that discouragement comes up every so often. But the message from the Lord today will make it clear to us is how discouragement is used to prevent the people of God from completing a God-given assignment. And also, we'll see how the child of God can combat this tool of discouragement. Very briefly, a background to Nehemiah. I'm just going to summarize this. Again, we invite you to come to Bible study, and we'll go through this. But Nehemiah is known as the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. He's the cupbearer, but when you look at this book of Nehemiah, it is really a book of prayer. It is, because Nehemiah, even though he opens this book, which is like he's sharing, it's almost like a memoir. It's almost like a letter to us, letting us know in depthly what he went through just to get God's assignment completed, and that was to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. The walls of Jerusalem have been torn down, and Nehemiah, the first chapter, you'll find that the book opens up with him inquiring about what's going on with his brothers and sisters, and he gets word that the walls are down. And when he heard that he had a burden on his heart, he felt that he needed to do something about the situation. Even though he's the cupbearer to the king, you know what the cupbearer is. The cupbearer is the one that would taste the wine or eat the food before the king would. Of course, that's not a job that all of us would want. I know it sounds pretty and, it sounds like a nice position, but who would want to be in a position where you have to taste the wine or the drink and it's poisoned? Because that means that you would die, and then, of course, the king would live. That's a very high-risk position there. But nevertheless, Nehemiah, he is a servant of God. He's in that position, and he is serving faithfully. He hears about the people, and he has this burden. So he has to rebuild this wall. God grants him favor with the king. He gets everything that he needs, and now he gathers the people together, and they're in the process of rebuilding this wall. But let me just share with you, brothers and sisters, that anyone who is in leadership in any circle of life, they end up dealing with discouragement. And if you're here today and you are a leader of your household, maybe it's just you and your cat, but there will be some discouragement. And if you are in leadership, understand that that comes with the territory. As a matter of fact, you don't have to have a title to say leader. Just being a child of God, you will face discouragement. I love this book, Nehemiah, because it really says so much. There's so much in it. It's so rich. It talks about conflict resolution. It talks about project management. It talks about dealing with people who like you, people who don't like you. It's just so much in it. But in this particular aspect, what we're looking at here, in chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, let's just look at that for a moment. But it came to pass that when Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, he was wroth and took great indignation and mocked the Jews. And he spake before his brethren in the army of Samaria and said, what do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? Now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up, listen to this closely, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. So now you got to understand, now of course I cut out several things, but all you know right now is they're in process of rebuilding a what? A wall. The wall, the place of security, the place of defense. Here it is, Nehemiah is doing a great work. As a matter of fact, he's not only doing a great work, because you do know that you can't complete a great work by yourself. You remember a while ago we talked about teamwork? Teamwork does make the dream work. So he had the dream team with him. Everybody had a role in this. They're in the process of rebuilding this wall. But soon after the wall started going up, some non-Jews named Sanballat and Tobiah, they heard about it, and they were very concerned. You say, why are they concerned? Because the repair of the wall and restoration of Jerusalem would bring a major shift in commerce and political power. That's very important. Whenever you are doing God's work, there's always going to be somebody sitting by watching you. They're just watching you. And they see things going well, but maybe too well for them, because then the attention shifts from them. Really, it's not even on you, but it's on God. But they can't understand that, so they think that it's you, but it really isn't you. Are y'all with me here? So here it is, Nehemiah and the people of God, they're doing this work, and Sanballat and Tobiah, they liked the way things were and did not want it to change. They did not want this wall to be rebuilt. Now, I try to figure out, why would you not want the wall rebuilt? They weren't hurting anybody. They were just innocently trying to repair this wall. Brothers and sisters, whenever you try to do the Lord's work, again, I don't care how good it is. I don't care how much is needed. Just know this. There's always going to be somebody sitting on the sidelines watching you with a critical spirit. You do know that in every circle of life, people resist change. Everywhere you go, people resist change. Now, keep in mind, though, this is not the first time we hear of these two rascals making noise about the rebuilding of the walls. They opposed this project from the beginning. But it's interesting because at the beginning, if you go back to the first chapter, you hear just a little noise, nothing much. Just, oh, they're trying to rebuild the wall. But as the project continues and they see some progress, now it's like, wait a minute, they're making some progress here. They really look like they're trying to get this wall built or rebuilt, so we got to do something. And so here it is, the opposition. They oppose this project, and the form of opposition coming here is criticism. Have you ever been criticized? There's so many critics in the world today. Criticism is the expression of disapproval of someone or something based on perceived faults or mistakes. I don't mind being criticized as long as it's constructive. You got that? See, there's a difference between constructive versus destructive criticism. Now, if you're going to encourage someone or to share properly, there's a way to do it. For example, if you're in school, now, Jemani, I know you did great this year. You did great. You got honors, right? This report card. You got all the nice A's and B's, right? Great. You did well. Proud of you. But you do know that on the first day of school in September, there might be some student that sits in the classroom maybe for the first few weeks. They take an exam, first exam. They don't do well on it. The teacher comes over to them and says, "Oh, you did horrible. What is this? You don't need to be in this class. This class is too advanced for you." See, now, if I hear that for the first time, and you didn't take the opportunity to say, oh, Susan, I see you didn't do too well on this exam. I'm sure that maybe if we sit down and go over these problems to see what you got wrong, maybe we can help you with this. Or maybe I can refer you to someone to help you. Or maybe I'll meet with your parents to discuss. See, that I can deal with that versus just, you don't belong in this class. You didn't do well. Can you see the constructive versus the destructive? Because the destructive will take a student that has potential and cause them to be discouraged and want to fold up. Y'all got the message? So that's why how you do a thing, how you critique someone is very important. Now, why is this important as we look at this text? Is because consistent criticism, when it's negative, produces discouragement. If I keep hearing you telling me, you're never going to be anything. You're never going to be, well, help me to be something then, you know. If all you're doing is just constantly pulling somebody down, never seeing hope or opportunities, then what it does is after a while, the more I hear that, at some point, I lose the desire to want to move forward because I become discouraged. Look at this text. Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, and he was what? He was angry. And he took great indignation, and he mocked the Jews. He spake before his brethren and the army of Samaria and said, "What do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in the day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned?" While he's talking, pay close attention to this. He's talking amongst some other people. Tobiah, in verse 3, the Ammonite, was by him and said, "Well, you do know," I can hear him saying that, "even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall." Now, a fox going up on a wall and it causes the wall to collapse. What are you really trying to say? It's a weak wall. What you're doing ain't nothing, really, you know. Criticism, negative criticism, and consistent criticism produces discouragement. Let me just show you. If you look down at verse 10, it says, "And Judah said, the strength of the bearers of burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish, so that we are not able to build the wall." Listen to that. These are the same people that were building the wall, and they're actually halfway complete. But after hearing all of the criticism, after hearing all that's going on, they now get to the point where they say, we are not able to build the wall. Let me just share with you just 4 things, evidence of discouragement. The loss of strength. In verse 10, Judah said, "The strength of the bearers of burden is decayed, and there is much rubbish." So here it is, the loss of strength. That's a sign of discouragement. Then there's a loss of vision. They're so busy focused on what they did not complete yet until they couldn't even value what they did already. They lost the vision. Nehemiah already gave them the vision. They lost that. They also lost confidence. Whenever you are discouraged, you can trust me, there's a loss of strength, vision, and confidence, because they say, we are unable to rebuild the wall. And then in verse 11, it says, "And our adversaries said, they shall not know, neither see, till we come in the midst of them and slay them and cause the work to cease." Now there's a loss of security. That's evidence of discouragement. But brothers and sisters, you do know that when God has a plan, he will execute it. He will get it done. So let's keep reading. It says in verse 12, "And it came to pass that when the Jews dwelt by them came, they said unto us 10 times, From all places whence ye shall return unto us, they will be upon you." Now, before I get into the point, I think there's something here that you need to take note of, and this is not going to be on the screen, but It's interesting that it says that when the Jews which dwelt by them came. In other words, there were some Jews who lived. They weren't helping build the wall, but they were hanging out next to Sanballat and Tobiah. They lived in that region. They heard what was happening. They heard that now this whole thing is escalated. Now, not only are they critiquing them, but now they want to get an army together. They're going to come and attack them. They hear it, and they come to Nehemiah and tell them what's happening. It's amazing how the enemy can send out just a negative propaganda. You hear it, and it can cause you to want to give up. These are people that should know better, but they are hanging around there, and they go back and tell them. But in a way, what God does, how awesome God is, he takes something like that, and he turns it around for his good. Because then that gave them an insight, Nehemiah and his group, insight as to what the enemy was planning without even telling them. See, you know, the enemy, God always knows how to reveal things to you. People don't think that, but God knows how to reveal when people are up to no good. If you're really in communication with God, if you're spending time in prayer with God, then what happens is he will open your eyes to see things that are not on the surface. He'll allow you to hear things that are not being said. You don't have to be in the meeting to know what's going on. I wish I had somebody in the house. Nehemiah was that kind of a man. He's God's servant. So here is, let's look at the strategy to deal with discouragement. Verse 12 and 13 says, "Therefore set I in the lower places behind the wall, and on the higher places I even set the people after their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows." You know what Nehemiah does? The people are all discouraged. Now, you got to understand, during the time of discouragement, the people stopped rebuilding the wall. All along, they were carrying out everything. They were doing, oh, yeah, we can do this. You know, that's the way it is. Whenever you start off with a project, there's a lot of enthusiasm at the beginning. But along the way, they're halfway completed. Here they hear all of this negative criticism. It discourages them, and now they stop. Oh, they're coming to get us now, Nehemiah. I can hear somebody saying, I knew I should not have followed this guy. I should have stayed home. I should have stayed in my bed. I'm out here trying to help this guy rebuild this wall. Somebody's saying that. I could have eaten my oatmeal this morning, you know. And now they're coming to get us. But look what God does through Nehemiah. What he does really is during this time when they're complaining and they're getting all worked up by the external issue that's coming from the outside in, and they're discouraged, what he does now is, number one, is he unifies the efforts toward a goal. He unifies the efforts towards a goal. See, what he did was, okay, you have already heard what was going on. It's negative. Now, this criticism is discouraging you. Okay, take a break. Catch your breath. And every now and then, God has a way of doing that. He has a way of allowing you to just catch your breath for a minute. And then he shifts the attention not on the rebuilding of the wall, but he now strategizes to get the people in place. So they stop building for a moment, and now he assigns people to hide in certain places so that when the enemy does come, if they did come, they were ready for him. Are y'all with me? He unifies all of the people towards a common goal. Look at verse 14. "And I looked and rose up and said unto the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, Be not ye afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your houses." Unify efforts toward a goal. The other thing he does is, number two, is he's really saying, remember God. Don't forget God in the whole process. He took the minds of the people. He says, listen, I know that they're trying to discourage us. I know that they're trying to stop us from rebuilding this wall. But I want us to get in certain strategic places so that if they did come to attack us, we're ready for them. But then in the midst of all of that, remember, God is the one that brought us this far. Brothers and sisters, whenever you are faced with discouragement, never forget to look back over your life. Look and see how the hand of God has kept you down through the years. You remember how you were sick in the hospital and you thought you weren't going to make it, and a doctor came with some bad news and it discouraged you, but yet you're still here because you called on God and he heard you and he answered your prayer. You remember how you were out of work that time and you thought that the doors would not be open, but somehow in the midst of everything that you were in need of, God took care of you. Well, look back and you'll see that he's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. You remember when that child of yours was just as wild and crazy as they say, wild and out, and you got on your knees and you cried and you prayed and you prayed and you cried and you prayed, and God answered prayer and he turned the whole thing around. You remember how your marriage was going in the wrong direction and you thought it was over, and somehow God stepped in and turned the whole thing around. Well, if you can do that, always remember God. Whenever you find yourself discouraged, stop like Nehemiah did and say, hey, listen, God is the one that brought us this far. Can you see him? Listen, we came here, there was nothing but rubbish. The walls have been torn down. Now the walls are at least halfway complete. If we can just finish the rest of it, we'll definitely have the job done. But it's God that even made it possible for us to get this half completed. Remember God. Look at somebody and say, remember God. Never forget God. I think it's important that Nehemiah did this, a leadership principle here from people who are God-fearing. It's not about you. It's about God.